Welcome to the Wednesday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Wednesday. Welcome, Derry Bennett, Q Bennett. Yes, elections, we'll talk about that. Alio, how's it going? Michael Hasser, how's it going? Welcome, everybody. Let me get myself situated here. Welcome. That's right, subscribe to the YouTubes. How's everybody doing? Let me pull up all the articles that we need to go over today. All right. Folks, today we're going to have to try to run on schedule, so I apologize, but we're going to have to get this this stream going. All right. Alio with the 12 biddies, thank you. Appreciate that. Also, quick thank you to Ravana for the offline shout out. Jay Len for the offline follow. I appreciate that.
So Donald Trump's testimony on Monday, of course, all the coverage of it has been about the insanity, Trump getting in trouble by the judge, Trump's lawyers getting in trouble with the judge, Trump's lawyers yelling back at the judge, Trump's lawyers and Trump attacking Letitia James, attacking the judge himself. So this...
Yeah, which again, I don't understand how this guy is still not in jail. But okay.
Spectacle. The theater of it all has been the main focus of the media. And that's a shame. Because on Monday, when Donald Trump was on the stand, he literally admitted to the things that he is accused of doing. Like, he got up on the stand under oath and basically said, yeah, I did it. Here's how that exchange took place. Did you ever think that the values were off in your statement of financial condition? Assistant Attorney General Kevin Wallace asked the former president. Yes, on occasion, Trump responded, both high and low. Yes, sometimes they were too high, sometimes they were too low. The thing that the state has actually accused me of doing, yeah, we did it. So, Can we just gavel out right now and be like, all right, case closed. Here's my judgment of what you owe. He admitted it. Like, your main defendant got on the stand. I just read it to you and he admitted it. He's like, yes, Yes, I did it. At that point, Engoron should have been like, that's not what a gavel sounds like. But anyway, like gavel sound, done. Thank you, Donald. We appreciate you. Your business is gone forever. Don't ever come back to New York. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's like 100% how that works, but essentially the gist is that, yeah, I mean, it's not surprising, right? Donald Trump doesn't think that he did anything wrong, right? Donald Trump doesn't believe that he did anything wrong, and he believes that he is effectively untouchable. That's why this is happening. He thinks that there's actually nothing wrong with it. Father daughter date. There you go.
that should have been the end of the trial. He admitted it. And I know the guilt was already determined in this civil trial. Well, the liability was already determined. But now that you have the confession, because you can't take that as anything other than a confession, like, why are we still doing it? We don't need Ivanka to come and show up and testify today. Like, it's over. You got him. You did it. Why are we still doing this? And why is every media outlet in the country not talking about this? Like, he did it. He confessed. That kind of seems like a pretty big deal to me. I don't know about you, but yeah, he did it.
Well, the thing is, like, honestly, out of all the stuff that he's right now embroiled in, out of all the stuff, like, this is on, like, the lower tier, okay? Because, like, I think the reason why a lot of people have tuned out, or at least this is a hypothesis of mine, since he's raising the point that, like, the media is not really covering it as much. This guy has an entire career built on con after con after con after con. And, like, nobody really is surprised and nobody really cares, right? Like, oh, wow, dude, the guy that's been, like, in trouble for fraud for, like, the umpteenth time is actually facing trial for checks notes fraud again. And I think people have just, like, effectively tuned out at this point because, I mean, to them, it's just, wow, another fraud. Donald Trump is embroiled in another fraud scandal. Wow, whoop-de-doo. What I do want to see is people's reactions to what happens with the more serious, crimes that he's being accused of. But that's just my 2 cents. I think that the reason why the media hasn't really paid much attention to it is because it's kind of like, oh, yeah, Donald Trump is involved in another fraud thing? Oh, no way. Wow.
Here's another thing.
Also, like, you have to, like, weigh in on, like, the scales of things because, like, Donald Trump has what, like, 90-something counts, and he's dealing with what, 4 different trials? That's a lot to keep track of, and on the list of those, that's on the low end, to be quite frank.
When you lie on a bank application,
91.
It doesn't matter if you inflate your assets or deflate your assets, because you sign a sworn document saying that you attest that these values, these numbers, whatever it is, are true and accurate. So going too high, like overinflating your assets, is just as illegal as undervaluing your assets. Like, you can't do either way. High, low, doesn't matter. If it's not accurate, it's illegal.
Right. That's a lot of crimes. Yep, Trump's daughter worried that he was not wealthy enough. Emails in the fraud trial show. Not surprised. Dude's lying about his wealth, too?
So him saying like, some of them were too low. Cool. Still illegal. You can't do that. He did continue and he said, probably I said I thought it was too high. I don't know what's too high anymore because I'm seeing things sold at numbers that are very high. So he's like, yeah, we definitely went too high on some of them. But hey, have you seen real estate prices recently? Ooh, crazy. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's admission number 2. And then, of course, Donald Trump tried to say, well, listen. And he says this on social media all the time. He says it in speeches. I had the disclaimer clause, and the disclaimer clause says don't believe anything we say, basically. So I'm in the clear. Judge Engoron addressed that too, and he said, the clause does not use the words worthless or useless or ignore or any similar words. It does not say the values herein or what I think the properties will be worth in 10 or more years. So Engoron dismantles Donald Trump's disclaimer clause and says like, yeah, just because you have that doesn't mean that it absolves you of your liability. So Trump's got no defenses left. He literally admitted to the thing multiple times while on the stand. So I think at this point, if Engoron were to choose, this trial's supposed to go into December, but I'm pretty sure he could wrap it up before Thanksgiving if he wanted to.
I did nothing wrong and they indicted me. Mouselander, how's it going? Welcome.
Anything beyond this at this point is simply to embarrass Donald Trump, and I'm okay with that. I'm just saying it's not necessary because the doofus just admitted to it. Hey everyone, this is Aspen.
Yeah, and like the whole point is I genuinely think that he does not think that there's going to be consequences. He genuinely believes that he's just above the law and that and then he can just do whatever he wants. Like, he's doing nothing wrong in his eyes. Embarrass Trump? Is that even possible? No, the dude has no shame. Trump does not like chump.
I always knew in the back of my mind that this is so incredibly expensive to have. So I did not take my drug as prescribed by my neurologist. I didn't even tell my neurologist about this because if I did, I already knew what they were going to say. They're going to say, well, you need to take this every day. Your disease has already progressed far enough that you need to be on this as prescribed.
Pete Rigney is a project manager and healthcare advocate living in Michigan. He's had multiple sclerosis for more than a decade. The treatments only get more expensive.
Because with multiple sclerosis, every new lesion you have on your brain or your spine is a lesion you will never get rid of. It'll be one that you live with forever. And I was aiming to have a 6-month supply because in my mind I'm doing the calculus to say, well, if I have a 6-month supply and I lose my job, well, I at least have that much medicine on hand. I wish I never had to do that. I wish I didn't have to make this price calculation in my head because I could never handle it any other way.
And nobody is immune to the soaring cost of drugs, not when the average price of a newly launched pharmaceutical is $257,000. But there is an emerging effort to rein in pharmaceutical companies' greed. In Michigan, State Senator Kristen McDonald-Rivet is leading the charge, and for her, it's personal.
You know, in my family, we have a hereditary autoimmune disease.
I wonder what that drug for MS is. Gata Naranja, welcome. You can't embarrass him, but you can destroy his fragile ego. True. I wonder what medicine he's taking for MS.
I watched my mother struggle and pass away, but she died about 2.5 years ago. Really, really hard to get good care, but harder still to get drugs that actually treat the disease. I was diagnosed with the same autoimmune disease about 10 years ago. I have a drug where my copay is $1,500 a month. So it personally impacts me, but also my story is not a unique story. It's the same story that I'm hearing on doorsteps and in churches, and people are calling my office. I mean, the reality is the national fix has to come from the federal government, but it's not happening. There is a lot of dysfunction there right now, and we simply can't wait for Congress to act. We have to start working state by state.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely criminal that like people are literally making decisions to either like ration medicine that their doctors literally telling them that you can't do that. You need to take this medicine every day, but like they can't afford it. And the costs only get higher and higher for them. I mean, it's freaking criminal.
In order to come up with a solution.
McDonald-Rivet is the sponsor of Senate Bill 485, legislation that would create a prescription drug affordability board in Michigan. The board would be empowered to set price limits when Big Pharma gets out of hand.
For drugs that are extremely costly and stressors on the healthcare system, which means stressors on patients and their cost sharing, stressors on providers and their ability to stock products, and on health insurers in terms of being able to finance all of this care. So for drugs that are these kinds of stressors, this board would figure out if something like an upper payment limit is needed, basically rate setting. So a board could decide what consumers will be charged for a product in a state.
Jane Horvath used to work for pharmaceutical companies and saw up close how prices began to surge when Wall Street got involved. The experience turned her into a longtime advocate for patients and reforms.
It became clear to investors that this was a great place to put your money, the pharmaceutical market. You get like the highest returns of like any industry you could invest in.
And the reason for that is because people need this. Okay? This is not optional. This is not optional. Sucks to have to really need an expensive drug. It sucks that companies are incredibly greedy, where they charge absurd prices. That's what sucks. Because like you can't help have what you have, but companies can be forced to not be greedy one way or another. I don't make $1,500 a month. Yeah, and the fact that like there are drugs that can potentially cost insurance that much money is criminal. Companies do this for profit, right? So therefore, that's completely immoral. That's not okay. The fact that like people are allowed to profit off of something that people need for their health is immoral. Period. Full stop. Like there's no debate about that. The fact that like you can profit off of something that people need is pretty immoral. It's legal. Yeah, it's legal, and it's not right. Just because it's legal doesn't make it right. The whole point is to then say, well, maybe they shouldn't be allowed to do that. Morals are not objective. Yeah, and? I think that the majority of people agree with the idea that profiting off something that people really need, like insulin and, daily medication for things like MS or whatever the case may be, is wrong. And just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right. So therefore, we use legislation and the government to change that. They shouldn't be allowed to do this.
Which then got pharma companies looking more and more closely at Wall Street.
Today we got an update when Pfizer reported, but the numbers came in a tad light. Management merely reiterated their new lower forecast from a few weeks ago. Not what we wanted to hear.
As you know, Wall Street sets analysts' expectations for a company's performance in any particular quarter, and to meet Wall Street expectations and maintain your company's stock value, it became simpler to just raise the price to meet the expectations of Wall Street than to sell more product at the older.
If government set profit limits on, let's say, pharma, you would see money shift to other sectors without limits, meaning less new drugs. That's not true at all. That's not true at all. I just say, personally, in my opinion, things that are involved, like healthcare, things that are like non-negotiable, which are like things like food, housing, healthcare, education, things like this. These are non-negotiable things that we need as a society, as a baseline, that we should not continue to entertain the idea that there is that it's okay to monetize these things, that it's okay to commodify these things. But yeah, the point being is that I don't think that's true. I once participated in a mock drug trial with a small stipend and food provided, and the drug lawyers insulted Europe. Europe has a much better Europe has a much better system than we do.
Price.
And in Michigan, it's a particularly acute issue because 60% of our jobs pay less than $50,000 a year. So when you suddenly are handed a copay for a prescription drug in excess of $1,000 a month, it just is simply undoable.
The Prescription Drug Affordability Board features two components. The initial work is done by a council of stakeholders, including patients, doctors, and even pharmaceutical companies who keep an eye on prices. They send drugs to the board, which investigates and then take action.
But what it will do is take a step toward taking the most egregious examples, the most egregious products on the market that are priced at a level that makes no sense other than unmitigated greed, right? So yeah, cancer drugs are a really good...
Yeah, and the reason why it will always end up into unmitigated greed is because people need this. That's why it's more prominent in and more egregious in drugs that people need, like insulin, or like cancer drugs, cancer treatment drugs. These are not negotiable. If a person that needs insulin does not get insulin, they die. So it's non-negotiable. Generic drugs are much cheaper than brand names, but if the brand names is still new, it's really expensive. Yeah, like none of this should be for profit. That's basically like the only moral position is that none of this, the only correct position is that none of this should be for profit. If your life is dependent on these drugs, they shouldn't come at a they shouldn't be essentially dangled over your head so that some people can make a couple bucks. The wife had to take an infusion for 1 week every month, cost $20,000. We have great insurance, so only one at a time. So only a one-time fee of $4,000. That's still absurd. Yearly, that is the $4,000. That's a lot of money. And the fact that they bill the insurance company, or they put it at the insurance company at $20,000 is absurd. I agree with the moral position. I just don't see how we can transition to this position in reality. We start peeling away the private sector. The private sector's garbage. The private sector has no place in healthcare when it comes to this kind of stuff, because it always ends up doing this. No matter how you want to slice it, the privatization and commodification of healthcare always ends up right here exploiting and dangling people's health over their head for profit. Because at the end of the day, the only motivation that these companies have is quarterly profits. That's it. That's where it begins and ends. It doesn't matter if the drug does what it does. It doesn't matter if the drug saves one person or 1 million. The only thing that it matters is how the portfolio and the stock looks to the shareholders, and every quarter. What does that line look? Is the line going up? Great, phenomenal. That's literally where the conversation begins and ends.
Good example of that. We're also looking at a lot of the biologics that are have been around for a while. They're not new drugs. So the argument about the cost of research starts to fade after they have been on the market for a while. These are things that have thousands of dollars of copay. Some of them are for $12.
Successful drugs is what drives sales growth. They do care about drug successes. No, they care about profit. It's just an item to them. If those drug sales are high, but the drug is crappy, like how we're finding out how a lot of these pain reliever drugs, drug success drive profit, that's not true. If you can successfully market your garbage ass product, then it really doesn't matter. Look at what we're finding out with all these like pain relievers. We're getting very interesting studies that show that, well, maybe these companies have completely overstated their drug's ability, but yet somehow they still generate massive amount of profit. So yeah, I don't know about that one.
$1,000 a month. And that's the place where we're going to start.
To say
the truth will come out and trade name will be worthless. Say yes, what you say happens. Yeah, but that happens a lot. If you can market an item good enough, like I've seen so much like really fancy brands or whatever, like as long as they market themselves good, the actual items themselves are garbage. But if you can market it, it doesn't matter. You're good. And as long as you can buy off like whatever you need to buy off regulation, regulation wise, you're good. So no, it's not always the case. The only thing that motivates these companies are profit. That's it. That's where the conversation begins and ends at how much profit their shareholders have made for that quarter.
that innovation is going to be stifled, I think is just hyperbole at best. And also these...
Yeah, and there's your answer to that other concern. Like, oh, it's just going to stifle innovation.
Companies, they don't...
Like, understand that people are going to need insulin, right? Like, it's non-negotiable. People are going to need insulin. People are going to need these cancer treatment drugs.
Don't exist except for doing research and development. Like, what else is Pfizer going to do? I mean, and like their business is way too lucrative to fold up their tent and go home and stop innovating.
Michigan would be the 6th state to enact a board with the power to set upper payment limits for drugs determined to be unaffordable. Colorado and Maryland's boards are getting closer to setting payment limits for the first time. The more states that launch their own boards, the more effective they'll be.
I think that pharmaceutical industry is coming to the table saying, how do we work through this?
Hold on, folks. Give me a second. Sorry about that, folks. Let's continue.
They are absolutely opposed to the idea of a state-level board, and in fact, in other states where this has happened, have been actively challenging it through the legal system, which we expect.
These upper payment limits are essentially healthcare rate setting, and the Supreme Court actually just in the last couple of years had a great decision based on a lawsuit in Arkansas, and basically said that state healthcare rate setting, it's allowed. It's designed with all these past court decisions in mind. So even if it were challenged, we've had some more recent Supreme Court decisions that sort of solidify that, a state upper payment limit should sustain a challenge.
You have an opportunity to
It's a slippery slope, too. If we start limiting profits for some companies and others, it seems kind of arbitrary. It seems like we would move to a setting the max price Intel can sell the CPU soon. No, that's a fallacious slippery slope. What does the price of Intel computers have to do with life-saving drugs? That's a fallacious slippery slope. That doesn't make sense. Come on. Come on. Well, if we nationalize the power companies, then what's next? People are going to start taking my toothbrush? This doesn't make any sense. Intel CPU goes into medical equipment. If it's life-saving equipment, then it would be bought by the government, because in an ideal situation, it would be a universal healthcare system. So the government would be giving Intel these contracts if they need it to build the medical equipment or to buy the medical equipment. So this has nothing to, it doesn't make any sense.
lean in and help us in our community. More than the multiple sclerosis community, it's not just us that are struggling and fighting and trying to keep our heads above water. There are so many devastating disease and therapies that people have to engage with that are just so amazingly expensive that other people are just walking all over us.
And it's all because a handful of people need to be $1 richer. You know? That's it. That's what it comes down to. All right, folks, let's switch gears. Capitalism kills, that's true. Trump narrowly leads Biden in a hypothetical rematch. Damn. It's almost like the same point that I've been talking about for a couple of months now continues to be proven right over and over and over again. 1 year out from the election, former President Trump narrowly leads Biden from 49 to 45, a statistical tie among registered voters. In a hypothetical rematch in the latest CNN poll conducted by SSRS, Biden's re-election chances are buffeted by deeply negative approval ratings, a stagnant sense that things are going poorly in the U.S., diminished support among key voter blocs, and a widespread sense that he's not up for the job. In the potential rematch between Biden and Trump, neither candidate has much room for growth. All told, 51% of voters nationwide said there's no chance at all that they would vote for Biden. And just 4% are not currently supporting him, but say there's a chance that they will. Nearly half, 48%, say there's no chance that they will vote for Trump. And only 2% that they're aren't currently backing him but would consider him. Biden's support in the polls is significantly weaker now among several groups that he previously won by wide margins and were critical to his election in 2020. Remember how I was talking about how I don't know if the same amount of energy that was there in 2020, I don't know if that same amount of turnout is going to be the same. Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty pretty spot on so far. Again, and as things change, as long as it's supported by the evidence, then I'm going to move in that direction. Among voters younger than 35, 48% support Trump. That's wild, by the way. That's ridiculous. 47% Biden. Political independents break 45 to Trump to 41 Biden, which is not good. That's not a good sign. That's a red flag. Black voters favor Biden 73 versus Trump to 23, while Latino voters are split 50 to 46. And among voters of color, generally women, divide 63 to 31, 63 Biden to 31 Trump, while men split evenly 49 to 46. Yeah, he lost Michigan and North Carolina, maybe Georgia. Yeah, I mean, if those swing states go, it's over. All those margins reflect significant declines in support for Biden compared with the 2020 exit polls, while those who actually turned out to vote are not the same as registered voters. And with a full year left to go before the election, there is time for voters' view to shift. The difference between then and now are stark. Biden won young voters than 35 by 21 points nationally, independents by 13, black voters 75, and Latino by 33 points. That's wild. That's wild. Among voters of colors, he won both women and men by wide margins, 53 by 34. We talked about poll evidence yesterday, so I'm trying to restrain myself. Yeah, I mean, like, this is reality. This is how currently things are moving in this direction. And they even give you a comparison between the exit polls of last election in comparison to now. It's night and day. So no, the situation is not good. And if Democrats want to do something about it, knowing that these alarm bells are ringing now, a year from the election, then they need to start working on it now. There is still 1 year. Yeah, absolutely. Could things change? Yeah. Could Biden do something that may turn the ship around? Maybe. Maybe. President Biden's long political career, he has been a senator. It doesn't matter. I'm talking about the now. I'm talking about what's happening now. The subtle shift of some black voters to Trump is something that people have been warning about for a little while, and it kept being ignored. I think I actually mentioned this a year ago about how people should get concerned the moment Republicans realize black voters are winnable. Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, this is very clear that the energy that is being expressed, or the energy that is being expressed now, is not the same as what we saw in 2020 right now. So that begs the question, like, what are the Democrats going to do? Where's the fire under the arse? Where's that fire under the arse? Because this is not great. The fact that you're statistically tied consistently, the fact that you're statistically tied consistently with someone who's who's facing 4 trials right now with 91 indictments is not good. It's just not great, okay? And like this, and pretending to not see the writing on the wall, and pretending that these alarm bells aren't ringing, and to pretend that these red flags aren't there is naive. is naive. If Trump is elected, I'll move from the US. Well, that's nice. Just a quarter of Americans, 25%, say Biden has the stamina and sharpness to serve effective as president, while 53% feel that Trump does. Keyword is feel, okay? Only about half of Democrats, 51%, say Biden has the sharpness and stamina to serve, compared with 90% of Republicans who say Trump does. That's just the Trump factor, right? Biden always polls badly? No, he didn't. Before the 2020 election, he was ahead of Trump by a lot. Like, there was no doubt about it. I think he was like at double digits ahead of Trump right before the election. And as these exit polls show, he had a massive lead in the demographics that got him to victory. So this idea that like Biden's always polled bad, I'm sure it was in the MIT data that the Democrats were only really winning in any convincing manner when it came to abortion rights. Every other issue was Republican leaning, and democracy was only slightly blue. Talking to a few points. Yeah, and I think that's more or less the same right now. That's more or less reflective right now. That proves polls are not evidence. Dems won a lot yesterday. Those Dems did. Not Biden. That doesn't prove anything. Those Democrats won, and the polls indicated, as such. And that's not the same as polling people who are going to vote for president. These are two separate elections. Let's hope a few guilty verdicts will have an effect on Trump. They might. They very well might. They very well might. And you know what? We might be talking. We might be singing a different tune. If that's the case, they might. And if that's the case, then we'll see. We'll see how much of a factor that ends up being. Because hey, even though Biden's polling so terribly, it may be that these trials may have more of an impact. It's a year away and it's circular right now. It's not really circular, and it's important to address these now. It's important to address these warning signs now. Because if you don't, and you just think that nothing's happening, and you just ignore this, and you continue to do what you're doing, and the polls keep moving in the same direction because you're doing the same things that you're doing and getting the same results, then, like, I don't know, it seems unwise to just act dismissive and act as if there's nothing going wrong here. Obviously, it's a little too soon before the complete panic should set in, and no doubt that some of the current events cast a shadow over responses, but the numbers are not good regardless, and the fact that it's a consistent trend is a concern. Dems have a big apathy problem. Yeah, wow, it's exactly what I've been saying, just more boisterous. That's exactly what I've been saying. So maybe if that's the case, and maybe these concerns need to be addressed now, because if you don't, and you can sit and you continue down the same path, you're gonna end up in the same place, and if you don't do anything about it, you're gonna end up with the same results. And to put your head in the sand and pretend that this isn't happening, I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. Hillary is out on all the shows. They're panicking. Like, she's actually doing, like, media appearances still. Make sure you have a passport not expired and start looking for a nice place in Mexico like me. Maybe learn Spanish. Well, I do know Spanish. My passport's fine, and I have dual citizenship. It's just expensive, and I have family here, and I have roots here, so I can't really just pick up and move. Okay, that's not how this works. People know. People can't just pick up and move. As much as I would like to snap my fingers. Not just the good news for Democrats is their commitment on abortion rights resonates across the country and their message exceeding expectations in an off-year election on Tuesday. Bad news is for Democrats. Most people don't like their president, and there's real concern they could be the first Democrat to lose a bid for re-election since Jimmy Carter. The country has soured on Joe Biden. There's just not any other way to put it. So another way of putting it is that obviously people value bodily autonomy, and in overwhelming cases, when bodily autonomy is put out on the ballot, people are going to vote to have reproductive rights. So that's completely separate from asking, like, oh, who are you going to vote for president? Does that make sense? I really hope they weren't banking on the abortion thing carrying them over for midterms, because if they did that, the most irresponsible thing ever, I'd like to think that they wouldn't be so naive. I mean, it's the Democratic Party, though, right? They seem to never have miss an opportunity to lose a completely winnable situation. The Democratic Party is famous for this, okay? The Democratic Party is famous for doing this exact thing. But yeah. But I don't buy it yet. Is this bashing Biden for clicks? I don't know about you, but I'm literally just reading off data that continues to be a consistent trend, as James Napper pointed out, as I pointed out. So again, if you don't want to if the Democratic Party does not want to address this, and people just want to put their heads in their sand, I mean, when if there is a situation where Biden loses, then I don't know, man, there's going to be, clips of me saying that the Democratic Party should have done something about this as these warning signs came up. So yeah, I mean, if people want to just put their heads in the sand, then that's fine. There's an air of slow-moving car crash about the Democratic campaign because, to be honest, up until a month ago, the Biden term was actually going quite well. But knowing that is quite different from voters, knowing that their perceptions are very different. Right. And I made a point of mentioning something to that effect, that this is the people's perception, and people are going to vote regardless if it's true or not. People are going to vote based on what they feel like how things are going, which is wild that people that there is a significant portion of people that somehow, for some reason, think or feel or perceive that Trump is going to be better on foreign policy, for example. Wild. But here we are. And people vote accordingly. And again, if in a month the situation is different, then I'll say so. It's that simple. Trump is an effing embarrassment on foreign policy, and yet people somehow feel like he would handle the onslaught that's happening in Gaza better. There are polls that are showing that somehow people would prefer him dealing with this. That's wild. There's actually quite interesting and now somewhat prophetic podcast which talked about how voters, particularly non-white voters, are not really getting into the message, not really getting the messages filtered down to them. Among the most politically tuned in last week, saw a kind of hand-wringing accusations of bias around the polls that you'd usually expect. Wait, from what year? From when was this? September 11th, a couple months ago. The focus was largely on a general election poll, whether a Wall Street Journal poll showing former President Trump and Biden tied is to be trusted. What to make of a CNN poll showing Nikki Haley is the only Republican candidate with a lead over Biden that falls outside the margin of error. How to understand data from New York Times suggesting that Biden is losing support among voters of color, which that panned out to be to start looking like more and more the case. That's not good. Ali with another 12 biddies. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. To begin, Trump does not trust his own intel agencies. He has his own ideas. Yeah, I believe I even made a video about this. Conscious Canuck, welcome. Biden's approval rating 39 and 61 disapprove is largely worse than previous modern presidents at this point in their re-election, but his rating is about on par with Trump's as of late of 2019. Trump stood at 41 approval at this point. Jimmy Carter was the only president with significantly lower approval ratings than Biden at this point. 1 year out from election day in 1980, just 32% approved of Carter's work as president. He ultimately lost his re-election, and Biden's job performance currently draws far more intense opposition than impassioned support. 42% of Americans strongly disagree with his performance, with just 14% strongly approving. Vice President Kamala Harris holds that same approval rating as Biden, abysmal. The new poll finds that 72% of all Americans say things in the country today are going badly. A broad majority have felt that way for the entirety of Biden's time in office. At best, 60% said things were going badly in March of 2021. Haley the comment? No. That's another thing. Haley is polling better. Why not her as a Republican nominee? Haley polling better than Biden? Yeah, but that's not what Republican voters want. They're going to vote Trump in terms of their primary. In terms of their primary, Republican voters are going to vote for Trump. Like, that's Trump's party. Regardless if it ends up being that consistently Nikki Haley would beat Biden, which I don't know about that, but more donors want Haley, but the voters are going to vote Biden, regardless of how many donors want Haley. That supersedes whatever the cult mentality is going to supersede all that. The Trump cult mentality is going to supersede that. In that scenario, voters who disapprove of Biden does fare better among weak disapprovers and strong disapprovers in the new poll, but he still lags behind Trump with these voters. 46 to Trump, 40% to Biden. Biden trails the former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley in a hypothetical matchup between the two, 49 to 43. Biden is also behind a matchup with Trump as a GOP nominee, where two declared independent candidates are included, with Trump, Biden, and Kennedy and Cornwell. So they even took the independent candidates into effect, and this is months ago, by the way. This is in September, and we're still around the same place. Marginally, not much has changed. Primary matches for both parties suggest a Trump versus Biden election is the most likely scenario. Yeah, that's undeniable. I think pretty much that's almost set in stone. Unless some extenuating extreme circumstances happen, it's pretty much going to be a Biden Trump rematch. Trump's narrow advantage over Biden comes even as public perception of the former president remains deeply negative, but the poll suggests Biden's image is even worse somehow, and those negative views of both candidates break in Trump's favor. When I asked if each of them is more a part of the problem or more part of the solution dealing with the nation's issues, 61% say Biden is more a part of the problem, and 57% say Trump is. Independents are a touch more likely to see Biden than Trump as part of the problem, 67 to 63. Both Biden and Trump have favorability ratings that are deeply underwater. 36 favorable, 59 unfavorable for Biden, 38 favorable, and 56 unfavorable for Trump. Among the 19% of Registered voters who see both Biden and Trump as part of the problem. 46% they'd vote for Trump, 34% for Biden, 17% for somebody else. Likewise, 18% of the registered voters who have unfavorable views of both Biden and split 44% Trump, 35% Biden, 17% somebody else. I mean, like, I think that, like, the important part to take from this is that the news that I've been talking about has been consistent so far. That's another question. Will centrist voters still vote Biden but tell pollsters no? Whenever you see someone who's not extreme, they last about 2 days in the media. True. I'm sorry, I'm confused. This is the recent article. I'm sorry. So hold on. Let me rewind that. This is the recent article, okay? This is the recent article from where we are right now. Biden campaign on stopping construction of the border wall, allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices, and ending the death penalty. As Biden campaigns for re-election, Democrats have heralded a series of accomplishments under his tenure. At times, Mr. Biden has called attention to promises by his predecessor that fell short. But like all politicians, Mr. Biden has had to confront the reality that campaigning and governing are vastly different, especially under a divided government. Even as Mr. Biden has fulfilled some of the pledges he made in 2020, not all of those have come to fruition after 3 years of his election. On the one hand, Mr. Biden has recommitted the U.S. to the Paris Climate Agreement, an international accord, but has yet done nothing. Canceled the permit for the Keystone Pipeline, which would carry petroleum from Canada to Nebraska, increased federal subsidies for people buying plans under the Affordable Care Act. On the other hand, he has been unable to push voting rights legislation or an assault weapons ban through Congress, and his ambitious plan to forgive student debt was roundly rejected by the Supreme Court. In running for presidency, Mr. Biden made Trump's border wall a central part of his campaign. On the first day of office, he issued a proclamation ending the national emergency declaration that has been used to direct resources from building the wall, but it didn't pan out, did it? I have 11-page report on President Biden's accomplishments. I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Hard pass. There are exceptions. It does not apply to unaccompanied children. Oh, this is the ending the asylum thing. Mr. Biden has not raised taxes for taxpayers under his threshold as he promised. Instead, he's focused on increasing taxes for corporations and making those making more than $400,000. His budget proposal proposed increasing the Medicare tax from 3.8% to 5% for income above $400,000. But that's not the complete story. Voting rights, police reform, weapons ban, none of that. Yep. Some analysis estimate that the tax increase on corporations could have an indirect effect on people through income scale. Mr. McBride said because the burden is often passed along, at least in part, to consumers and workers through, say, lower wages or stock values. So then we shouldn't increase the tax rate? Like that's not convincing to me. That's not convincing. Like absolutely, Biden did the right thing by increasing taxes. Yeah, like we're not really discussing that right now, Alio. Voting rights, police reform, weapons ban, none of that happened. Yep. Well, none of that was going to happen. Not in this Congress. As Mr. Biden did sign legislation authorizing the federal government to negotiate lower prices for some medications for Medicare recipients by not repealing the existing law, but by adding an exemption. That measure was part of the Inflation Reduction Act approved in 2022. The congressional CBO has estimated the program could save the government about $100 billion over a decade. Drug makers have filed multiple lawsuits in efforts to halt this drug pricing program. Yeah, I mean, I agree with this. This is no doubt a lowercase w. There's also a polling article from NYT. I don't know if you covered this already. Yes, I believe so. Those comments was not to put in chat or state it now. It's cool. Come on. Okay. Trump leads Biden in 5 of the 6 key battleground states polled by the New York Times and Siena College. Yeah, this is part of like what led up to this entire conversation. This is if this trend continues. If this trend continues, then it's bad news. If this trend continues, if we keep hearing the same consistent results, then that's going to end up being a problem. Does that make sense? If we keep hearing the same consistent results in, like, let's say a couple more months and a couple more polls, and they keep moving in this direction, that's not good. That's actually what kicked off this entire, like, 2-day coverage of all of this. Eric the Eclectic, welcome. The second one is quite interesting as it's the newsletter they sent out, which is from September, which again explains why we're seeing the trends in non-white votes. Okay, I think this makes a good point of why it's important to pay attention to what's happening, and why this is, and why this should be ringing alarm bells. I mean, Massachusetts is blue, but polling suggests a deep dislike of politicians, but candidates are liberal and win. Right, that may be the case in Massachusetts. Consistent signs of erosions in Black and Hispanic vote for Biden. President Biden is underperforming among non-white voters in New York Times, Siena College national polls over the last year. This is in September. On average, Mr. Biden leaves Trump by just 53 to 28% among registered non-white voters in a compilation of Times Siena polls from 2022 and 2023, which includes over 1,500 non-white respondents. The results represent a marked deterioration in Mr. Biden's support compared with 2020, when he won over more than 70% of non-white voters. Yeah. If he's unable to revitalize this support by next November, it will continue a decade-long trend of declining Democratic strength among voters considered to be the foundation of the party. Mr. Biden's tepid support among these voters appeared to be mostly responsible for the close race in early national surveys, which show Mr. Biden and Trump all but tied among registered voters, even as Mr. Biden runs well among white voters as he did 4 years ago. Again, this is months ago. This is months ago. And we're still at the point of the same trend where right now, this is a statistical tie. And the fact that we're seeing some alarming signs in key swing states, it's not good. With more than a year to go until the election, there's plenty of time for Mr. Biden to re-energize his former supporters. Indeed, the Times and Siena data suggests that Mr. Biden could approach, though not match, the 2020 standing simply by reclaiming voters who say they backed him in the last election. But the possibility that his standing will remain beneath the already depressed levels of the last presidential election should not be discounted. Democrats have lost ground among non-white voters in almost every election over the last decade, even as racially charged fights over everything from border walls to kneeling during the national anthem might have expected to produce the exact opposite result. Weak support for Mr. Biden could easily manifest itself in low turnout, as it did in 2022, even as many young and less engaged voters ultimately do not vote for Mr. Trump. Many of Mr. Biden's vulnerabilities, like his age and inflation, could exacerbate the trend, as non-white voters tend to be younger and less affluent than white voters. Overall, the president's approval rating stands at just 47% among non-white voters. In Times Siena poll for the last year, his favorability rating was 54%. Issues like abortion and threats to democracy may also do less to guard against additional losses among black and Hispanic voters who tend to be more conservative than white Biden voters. They may also do less to satisfy voters living paycheck to paycheck. Mr. Biden's underperforming among non-white voters making less than $100,000 a year, at least temporarily erasing that century-old tendency for Democrats to fare better among lower income than higher income non-white voters, which is the trend now. The trend is very similar. Not much has changed since months ago. The Times and Siena data suggests that emergence of a fairly clear education gap among non-white voters, and Mr. Biden loses ground among less affluent non-white voters and those without a degree. Overall, he retains a 61-23 lead among non-white college graduates, compared with the mere 49-31 lead among those with a 4-year degree. If the gap persists until the election, it will raise the possibility that the political realignment unleashed by Mr. Trump's brand of conservative populism, there's another word for that. There's another word, another term that comes to mind when you talk about conservative populism. Yeah. Has spread to erode the political loyalties of the working class voters of all races who were drawn to the Democrats by material interest in an earlier era of politics. Mr. Biden's weakness among non-white voters is broad, spanning virtually every demographic category and racial group, including a 72-11 lead among black voters and a 47-35 lead among Hispanic registrants. The sample of Asian voters is not large enough to report, although non-white voters who aren't black or Hispanic, whether Asian, Native American, multiracial, or something else, back Mr. Biden by just 40 to 39. In all three cases, Mr. Biden ties are well beneath the standing of his last election. The findings are echoed by other high-quality national surveys. These show Mr. Biden faring as poorly among non-white voters, or somewhat worse, as he does in the Times Siena data. On average, he leads 74-19 among black voters and 50-40 among Hispanic voters across 12 high-quality national surveys so far this year. The shift is also echoed in how non-white Times/Siena respondents say they voted in 2020. Overall, non-white respondents who divulged their vote in the last election reported backing Mr. Biden by a margin of 70% to 24%, a figure neatly in line with post-election studies. Nonetheless, Mr. Biden does not approach those tallies in a hypothetical rematch among the very same group of respondents. What if Biden was strong in the polls and still lose the 2024 election? It's possible, but not as possible Could it happen that somehow a strong showing in the polls could still lose you the election, like maybe via the Electoral College? Yeah. Every poll showed that Hillary Clinton was going to win in terms of like the popular vote, and she did. She won the popular vote by a margin within a margin that was well within the margin of error of all the polls that came out, but she lost in the Electoral College because of how that panned out strategically. These polls are only to be used as a measurement of how the sentiment of what is happening. That's what this is. And if you consistently get the same sentiment and consistently move in this direction, the popular vote is going to end up around the same margin of error within these polls. So again, these alarm bells, it would behoove the Democratic Party to heed them. And again, if people want to dismiss this, okay. If you want to dismiss this, that's fine. But if it turns out that because none of this was paid attention to and Biden ends up losing the election, then like, you know, that's the civics hypocrisy. Popular vote does not beat the Electoral College numbers. I mean, well, yeah, the Electoral College is undemocratic. The Electoral College is undemocratic by definition. But we don't have a way of polling that. We can only poll what the country is feeling at the moment, more or less. The survey finds evidence that a modest but important 5% of non-white Biden voters now support Mr. Trump, including 8% of Hispanic voters who say they backed Biden in 2020. Virtually no non-white voters who say they supported Mr. Trump, just 1% say they will back Mr. Biden this time around. In comparison, white Biden and white Trump supporters from 2020 say they will return to their previous candidate in near identical numbers. Beyond voters who have flipped to Mr. Trump, a large number of disaffected voters who supported Biden now say they're undecided or simply won't vote this time around. That's dangerous. Remember, like, I didn't even see this article. I didn't even see this article that came out a couple months ago. And I was saying that I don't know if the same energy is going to come out, if the same amount of energy and turnout is going to be the same in 2024. That was a one-time deal. That was a one-trick pony because people wanted Trump's out of office so bad that they voted, that they came out in a historic fashion to remove Trump. That's it. That's why this happens, and that's why I'm saying the things that I'm saying, or one of the reasons, anyways. You have to cast aside the tendency to think about why someone would vote for something and think about if they will vote for something. It makes sense that poor, minority, and marginalized people tend to vote Dem against Republican, but that's not how it works. It will always come down to who can motivate people to actually do it. Democrats are struggling to motivate their people. Sometimes that apathy is rational, sometimes it's irrational. So it's not always as easy as saying give them policy. I mean, but it's a start, right? Like if you have a foundation of like good policy and you make a real effort to make that policy that you campaigned on or your base likes, then you have a more likely chance. That your base will respond accordingly, right? It's not always the case, but I would say that if you have a strong foundation, like a platform that's actually based on policy that you made a serious effort to try to do, and that your base can see the efforts that you've done to make said policy happen, in this case, because it's such a gridlocked Congress, that it's difficult. But If you don't even do that, then why am I even voting? Why am I even voting for the Democratic Party? Any policy that's not revenue positive for the wealthy is dead on arrival anyways. True. Repost, a special counsel. Jack Smith may indict GOP members of Congress who assisted Trump in conspiring to overturn the presidential election and overthrow the government. I mean, if he does, we'll report on it when that happens. The reality is all these people that participated in these schemes to shoehorn fake electors to overturn the election, all those people should not be in Congress. All of those people should have been removed. Anyways, I think the point has been made. And I think I've done a significant, a significantly detailed, almost ad nauseum, segments and rants and articles to drive that point home. Democrats have to think very hard about what will get those people. Unfortunately, these days, scandal and outrage is the most obvious go-to, but that also tends to lean heavily against incumbent parties. So this time it favors Republicans. They have to find a way to counterbalance that. You either have to inflate your vote or deflate your opponent, give concessions to your people or theirs, and hope it pays off. Start with your base. Start with your base, especially if your base is telling you, we're not happy. Especially if your base is telling you, we're not happy. We don't want Biden. Maybe, I don't know, you need to start getting those people on your side. And the way to do that is you gotta give something. You're doing a very good job. Thank you. I hope the point I hope the point is made. And I hope that the Democratic Party does not ignore this. Otherwise, this is a recipe for disaster. Another point of many voters want a younger female president. I don't know. I think misogyny is still very, very much embedded. But yeah, I think people do want a younger generation to start picking up. So who knows if the next election cycle is going to be different. If there's going to be a more open field of, new candidates or whatever, that is yet to be seen. We'll see. It's also a bit of a fatal flaw of Democratic voter base in that it does rely on a significant margin of victory in non-white voter demographics now, mostly because that same demographic are the ones who tend to have lower turnout rates and higher rates of apathy, which means they tend to find populist messaging appealing. Yeah, so then cater to the base and then make sure that you have the policies to kind of match that and try to fight for said policies. I don't know. Florida Supreme Court debates recreational marijuana amendment to state constitution. Pay attention, folks. The Florida Supreme Court is debating whether voters should have the chance to decriminalize marijuana in the state next year. The justices heard arguments Wednesday morning about recreational marijuana amendment to the state constitution. It would allow Floridians to have up to 3 ounces of marijuana without facing any state criminal charges. The measure's sponsor is Smart and Safe Florida, a group bankrolled by Trulieve, a dominant medical marijuana dispensary in Florida. The State Attorney General Ashley Moody's office challenged the amendment and asked for the Supreme Court to decide if it was valid. Attorneys for her office argued that it could be considered confusing because the amendment says people would be allowed to have marijuana even though the federal government still bans the drug. What they should have said is that this amendment eliminates state law penalties and liabilities for certain use of marijuana. That's far more accurate, said Jeffrey DeSouza, the Chief Deputy Solicitor General. They don't want to do that because it's less sexy and less appealing to voters. But Smart and Safe Florida lawyer disputed the claim, saying voters are smart enough to know what the ballot means. Yeah, I mean, we saw this with the Ohio ballot, right? But my for-profit for prisons. I'm assuming that the thought process of Democrats is that they appeal too much to the populist ideas to try to win that portion of the vote, that it may have, and they're either turning other Democratic voters who don't like it, or more likely that they will galvanize opposition under the accusation of socialism or whatever else. Yeah, I mean, like, they need to get over that. They need to get over that. They literally call people like Fu Manchu, who just pointed out, welcome. They literally called Biden a communist. So like, it's just, to me, it's just like, that just needs to go. That mentality needs to go. As Hispanic or Latino are usually Republican by religion or faith, their father figure takes a while to change their voting habits. A typical voter, most voters will understand that the federal prescription on marijuana is not an issue here. It's about Florida law. Groups have tried to get recreational marijuana initiative on the ballot before. If I look at Florida, we've been trying to do this for like 6 years now, said Vijay Choksky, an attorney with Fox Rothschild in West Palm, whose main focus is marijuana. Though Smart and Safe Florida got enough signatures to get the initiative on the ballot, groups have gotten this far before. Some ballot amendments didn't really get enough votes to get on the ballot. Some did. Some were able to pass Supreme Court scrutiny after getting the necessary signatures. And here we are today, where we have our closest, I guess, attempt to get on the ballot. But closest may not cut it if the Florida Attorney General's office has anything to say about it. One of the most consequential choices that voters can make is whether or not to amend the Florida Constitution, said Jeffrey DeSouza, arguing for the Attorney General's office. Okay, and this is like one of the few direct democratic tools that people have. What the statute requires is clear and unambiguous ballot language and a ballot summary that's explanatory statement of the chief purpose of the measure. Oh, well, now we care about ballot language, right? Now we care about being, simple and concise and understandable. When Republicans have done the most confusing ballot measures on purpose, time and time again. And now when we talk about just having like recreational marijuana, like all of a sudden now we're going to get really into the nitty gritty about wording. Jesus. So we have a Republican presidential debate. Is Trump allowed to be there? I think he is. I think he made it, but I think he he was eligible, but I don't think he's going to show up though. That's two different things, right? He might qualify for the presidential debate, but he's choosing not to show up for whatever reason. I mean, there's no point in watching the debates. There's nothing of value. There's nothing of value there. Literally, there's nothing of value to be listening to any of these Republican debates, because like none of those people are going to be the nominee. Okay? None of those people are going to be the nominee. Holy City, watch it on the MR channel. Oh yeah, that's right. They are going to stream it, right? When is this thing? Maybe I'll just raid into them, because I'm supposed to be Wes Trump is brain fried right now. When is the debate? Is it starting right now? It starts in about 10 minutes, or at least the stream is. Gotcha. Well, maybe when I get the majority report alert, maybe we'll raid into them. That'll be something we can do. I'm supposed to be moderating anyway, so the Attorney General opposes the ballot placement because we think in several ways this ballot summary is misleading. It's not. It's not. It's just recreational marijuana is going to be allowed in Florida. That's it. It's literally that simple. Shosky say that measures have been struck down by the court in the past. Groups have used the ruling as a roadmap for writing new ones. The Smart and Safe campaign released a statement after the Wednesday's hearing saying, "We believe that after today's oral arguments, it is clear that the language is drafted to conform to the roadmap that the court itself has provided in prior cases. We hope that the court agrees that the language strictly adheres to the law and will allow the citizens of Florida to exercise their sovereign right to decide whether to amend their constitution." Trulieve, who's backing Smart and Safe, released a statement of their own saying, "We believe the campaign's lawyer properly conveyed their case to the court and remain hopeful that the justices will ignore the political rhetoric, stick to the law, and give Floridians the opportunity to vote on this important initiative. But if the court sees the initiative the way the AG office does, they'll find the language lacking." Quote, "What they should probably have said is that the amendment eliminates state law penalties and liabilities for certain uses of marijuana. That's far more accurate. Even if the Supreme Court gives the measure the green light, it would take the supermajority of voters to go all the way. And if it doesn't, Chosky says groups are sure to try again." Nice. Imagine Florida legalizing marijuana. Danica Rome to become Virginia's first trans state senator. Nice. Virginia, Danica Rome made political history once again after winning a seat in the state senate on Tuesday. She's the first out trans person to elected to Virginia's upper chamber, and only the second trans person elected to any state senate in the United States, following Delaware's Sarah McBride in 2020. Rome, a Democrat, defeated her Republican opponent, Bill Wolf, by more than 3 percentage points. Wolf, a former Fairfax County police officer, was endorsed by the state's Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin. "I'm grateful for the people of Virginia's 30th Senate District electing me to continue representing my lifelong home of Western Prince William County and Greater Manassas," Rome said in a statement shared on social media. "The voters have shown that they want a leader who will prioritize fixing roads, fixing roads, feeding kids, and protecting our land instead of stigmatizing trans kids or taking away civil rights. Rome, a 39-year-old former journalist, first made public history 6 years ago when she became the first out trans person elected and seated in a state legislature. In doing so, she defeated one of Virginia's longest-serving and socially conservative lawmakers. Nice! Anise Parker, president and CEO of the LGBTQ plus Victory Fund, a national organization dedicated to getting LGBTQ people elected into public office, said Rome's win on Tuesday serves as a deafening rebuke to bigots who continue to try to silence the LGBTQ plus community, and trans people in particular. Danika's faced an unprecedented deluge of anti-trans hate on the campaign trail, but she was not fazed nor distracted. In a statement, said Parker, a former mayor of Houston, said in a statement she made LGBTQ plus history tonight and she put constituents first, speaking to the real issues that impact children and their families in Virginia, from fixing roads to ensuring kids and families have food on the table. In an article published in The Advocate last week, Rome said her opponent's supporters have criticized her support of trans student athletes, have accused her of not protecting women's sports by allowing boys and girls spaces. Narissa Rahman, the executive director of Equality Virginia, a statewide LGBTQ advocacy group, said Rome's victory is both groundbreaking and heartening for the Commonwealth future. Senator-elect Rome's victory showed once again that anti-LGBTQ policies and personal attacks are a losing strategy in the Commonwealth and across the country, by the way. Doesn't matter what Matt Walsh says. Dude can cope and seethe. This is not popular, okay? The more you make, the more bigotry and just hatred you launch at the trans community, and the LGBTQ plus community as a whole, it's a losing strategy that's been proven time and time again. We know that she'll continue to do so in the Senate, and we're thrilled that her voters see what we see: a dedicated, effective, strong leader for Virginians. Rome wasn't the only LGBTQ Virginian to emerge victorious last week. According to the LGBTQ plus Victory Fund, 8 other queer candidates won legislative seats in the state Tuesday, including 3 who were not incumbents. Nice. The success of Virginia's LGBTQ candidates was part of a broader rainbow wave this year, according to LGBTQ plus Victory Fund. The group said it had tracked more than 200 victories for lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and queer candidates so far this year, including at least 148 wins on Tuesday. Nice. Nice. So there's some good news. Speaking of which, I think we're going to just close on this. Democrats won big on abortion rights Tuesday. Here's what the results say for the U.S. going into 2024. Democrats have plenty of good news to celebrate on Tuesday's off-year election and more evidence that they can win races centered on national debate over abortion. Of course, anything that involves abortion, when you give people the right, then you give people the right to choose to have bodily autonomy, people are going to vote for that. Abortion rights supporters won the Ohio ballot, and Democratic governor of Beat Red, Kentucky, held on to his office by campaigning on reproductive rights and painting his opponent as an extremist. A Democrat won an open seat in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court after campaigning on his pledge to uphold abortion rights. And Democrats took full control of the Virginia State House, blocking Republicans from being able to pass new abortion restrictions and delivering a defeat to Glenn Youngkin that made douse any buzz about a late entry into the GOP presidential primary. Womp womp. Glad they won. Hope they can hold on to their morals while in office. The victories won't be enough to make Democrats feel secure heading into next year's presidential election. The off-year election have major implications in all those states, and to provide a snapshot of American politics in 2024. But the two big names, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, were on the ballot this time. How Americans view them will be a huge factor in shaping next year's race. Democrats got more evidence that they can win races centered around national debate over abortion. Abortion rights supporters won the Ohio ballot. Yeah, but what is Joe Biden, in terms of the presidential race, what is Joe Biden going to do? Like, is he going to promise to codify Roe? How? He doesn't have Congress. It's different when you have a ballot initiative that people can exercise direct democracy. They're obviously going to choose the ability to have, bodily autonomy. That's been like a consistently like winning issue. But in terms of like the actual presidential election, like what is the talking point for Biden? Historic first, former Biden White House aide Gabe Amo became the first black member of Congress from Rhode Island after winning the special election. Democrat Sherrell Parker was elected as Philadelphia's first female mayor. It was a good night for Democrats, but none of the races were an up or down decision on President Biden or former President Trump. Abortion remains potent for Democrats. Democrats notched 2 early wins on Tuesday in Kentucky and Ohio. The states that voted for Trump in 2020. In both states, abortion was the main campaign issue. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear was reelected. In the state that Trump won by 26 percentage points, Beshear criticized the abortion view of the Republican challenger, Attorney General Daniel Cameron, in debates and television ads. One Beshear ad featured a woman who miscarried after being raped by her stepfather at age 12, expressing disbelief at Cameron's opposition to abortion in cases of rape or incest. The only thing he can do is help military get abortions. That's right. In Ohio, the ballot measure preserving abortion rights passed in a state that Trump won by 8 percentage points in 2020. Republicans already tried to derail this measure by calling an unusual August referendum to make it harder to pass the ballot measure, an initiative that was also roundly rejected. Yeah, so this idea that, like, voters don't know what they're doing is pretty condescending, okay? Later Tuesday, Dan McCaffrey won an open seat on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court after positioning himself as a defender of abortion rights. And in Virginia, well, like, yeah, you see, that's different. If you have, like, a election for a Supreme Court position, then all of a sudden, I'm going to look at that way more, with much more weight. And on that, absolutely, Democrats have a huge advantage in that scenario. And in Virginia, Democrats held the state Senate and flipped control of the Virginia House of Delegates from the GOP. The outcome suggests a transformed political landscape since a conservative majority of the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the federal rights to abortion. Abortion rights measures have passed in a plethora of states, and some other Republican-run states have instituted new bans on the procedure. Abortion rights may not be potent enough to issue to swing an election on its own. Several GOP governors who supported new bans cruised to re-election last year, including Ohio's Mike DeWine, Florida's Governor DeSantis, and Texas Governor Greg Abbott. But abortion was a key issue across the country on Tuesday, and that should worry Republicans in competitive races next year. It was a good night for Democrats following a series of wins with special elections, and comes after a stronger performance in last year's midterm, which are usually crushing for the party in power. But none of the races were an up or down decision on the incumbent President Biden, and none featured Trump on the ballot or his ability to turbocharge turnout of infrequent voters. Democrats have performed well in recent special elections and did better than expected in 2022. It increasingly seems likely that the party starts from a position of strength, but it's not clear that translates to its 80-year-old president who faces widespread skepticism about his job performance and whether he's too old to serve a second term. We'll have to wait until 2024 to see how Biden fares. Glenn Youngkin burst onto the political scene in 2021, winning an upset victory to become the Republican governor of Virginia, a state Biden won handily the previous year. Putting a moderate suburban dad spin on modern republicanism, Youngkin generated buzz that would even make a late surprise entry into the GOP primary after this month's election. Instead, Youngkin said he would focus on 2023 legislative election and winning full Republican control of the Virginia government. Things did not go the way he hoped. Youngkin raised tens of millions of dollars for Republicans to defend their majority in Virginia's House of Delegates and win control of the Senate, which Democrats narrowly held in 2021. Among the things that the legislator could do with that majority, he said, is pass a 15-week abortion ban that he favored. Youngkin didn't really have the path forward in the presidential primary. His window to get on the ballot is already closed in some states. Virginia has an unusual single-term limit for governors, making Youngkin's political future even more of a question. Whatever he does, he'll have to explain 2023, and he'll face unified Democratic control of the state house for the rest of his term. We already talked about this. And I think that's it. Nice. All right, folks, we made it. Also, 9 days left until the next political football gets passed around. House Republicans don't want a government shutdown, but there's still no plan. There's 9 days left, so we'll see what happens. And we'll also see that if since that rule is still in place where one person can create a motion to vacate, we'll see if the same scenario plays out where where Mike Johnson is forced to make, concessions, or forced to make a maybe another continuing resolution, and immediately trigger a motion to vacate because he conceded to Democrats or some nonsense. They better not shut down. I'm waiting on 244S. Tlaib should call it, the motion to vacate? If they do end up shutting down Pirate Ninja, it's gonna be the Republican Party's fault. If they can't figure out anything soon, then they're gonna have to pass a continuing resolution. They're gonna have to make some concessions. And when that happens, you're gonna have to make some concessions. When that happens, I'm wondering if another circus is gonna unfold, where they're gonna file a motion to vacate, because they're not gonna get everything that they want. The Republicans have to make concessions. Mike Johnson is gonna have to make concessions if they're gonna pass this through the House and the Senate and get it signed by Biden. So no matter what, no matter how you slice it, they're going to have to make some concessions in some way, shape, or form. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not that's going to trigger a motion to vacate. The GOP Clown Show is on tonight again. Yeah, apparently the Majority Report is gonna stream it. When does it start? At 8 p.m. or at 7 p.m.? I'm trying to see when when they're gonna start. When does the... Oh, this is gonna start at 8 p.m. This is gonna start at 8 p.m. No way. All right. We'll keep an eye on this. There's still 9 more days. So we'll see how this circus unfolds. Folks, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. It really does help us out. If you want to support the channel and cannot do so monetarily and want to go even further beyond, make sure you head on over to the YouTube channel. Hit the big red subscribe button. It really does help us out. Spread the word far and wide. We're here Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, Michael Hassler. I appreciate you moderating the chat. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the biddies. Thank you for the follows. Thank you for the subscriptions. I appreciate it. You guys are what makes this channel grow. Folks, as always, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. Form 4 is what you submit to the ATF to get a silencer. So if the ATF shuts down with the federal government, that will take longer. I mean, like, from my understanding, that's like months, right? But I could be wrong. I had no idea what that form is. 208 days is the average wait time. Jesus. All right, folks. Don't forget, 8 p.m. is the clown show. If you do want to watch it, find your favorite streamer. Personally, I will most likely be in the background, monitoring the Majority Reports chat. That's probably where you'll find me. Otherwise, find your favorite streamer, and if you're gonna watch the clown show, the circus, I should say. All right, folks, as I was saying, thank you guys so much for joining. I appreciate it. Thank you, Michael Astor. Thank you for all you wonderful folks hanging out in the chat. I appreciate it. As always, folks, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. See ya. Bye-bye. Hang tight, folks. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.